Do you know that most players use only a fraction of their brain power when they play chess? Too little! You are losing games because your brain is focused on the wrong things. As an international master and a coach, I have identified a two-step system that you can learn and start using today to beat your opponents. This proven formula will shift your focus into the right areas, leading to high-quality moves and saving you valuable time during your chess games. What's up, chess player, and welcome to the Journey to Grandmaster, the place where you can improve every single aspect of your chess game. So I played this amazing game, tournament game, as black against a 2000 rated opponent, and I just completely destroyed him in 15 moves. Can you imagine that? They have done it using just this two-step, very simple formula that I'm gonna share with you today. So the game started with d4, d5. He played the move c4, and then after e6, he played knight to c3. Now, of course, the game starts with a few basic yet incredibly powerful and important principles that you must follow. First of all, you fight for the center. It does not matter whether you play as white or as black, the center is the part of the board where all of the main actions are happening. Secondly, you want to bring all of your pieces into the game. You should do it as fast as possible, and you should bring your pieces to the most active squares available. That is why here I'm playing the move bishop to b4. It's a very active move, I'm pinning that knight, but very important, I don't want to immediately take it, as if my opponent attacks me with the move a3, then I'm gonna take, and well, his pawn structure wouldn't be that ideal anymore, and I'm gonna get a little bit of development lead. It's so essential. Who is gonna bring all of the pieces into the game first is gonna get an advantage. To achieve that, you should follow a golden rule of one piece, one move. Just don't spend more than one tempo with every single one of your pieces unless all of them are developed. This way, you're gonna make sure that everybody is involved in the party. My opponent took here on d5, and so far we don't have anything special. I take it back. He plays the move knight f3. Now, after the move knight f6, I continue the development. We are having a normal Rogozin defense for black. It's a very dynamic opening, a very active one. That is why I love it for black. My opponent plays the move bishop to f4, seemingly a completely normal move, just developing yet another piece. What can be wrong with that? Well, in fact, this f4 is not the ideal square for this bishop to go in the Rogozin defense. Why? Because normally they put it on g5, where it creates a pin with the knight, and the knight cannot jump to e, which can be really unpleasant for white here, because, well, I'm putting even more pressure on the knight on c3. But before doing that, I have started with the move c5, because I want to put more pressure on the center, I want to attack it, I want to open up the way for my queen to go, and I want to be ready to really attack my opponent, put pressure on him. So that's the perfect moment for me to share the two-step system with you. If you want to defeat your pretty strong opponents, it's like 2000 rated opponent, you need two things. First, you really need to bring all of your pieces into the game. That is something we have already discussed, but it's so essential that you do it fast and in the most active way possible. Second step, you have to create as many threats to your opponent as possible. You need to put pressure on him, you have to make his life miserable. And the best case scenario, how you can truly master this method and destroy your opponents, is when you combine those two things at the same move. So I played here the move c5. I'm fighting for the center. I'm bringing this new guy into the game because, well, pawns are not the pieces, but they still, if you are talking about the center, they can be very active and create problems for your opponents. I don't really advise you to push the side pawns, because in most of the cases it's waste of time, and time is the most important resource in chess. But those center and close to center pawns, like the c pawn, can really help you put additional pressure. Also, it helps me, like I mentioned before, open up this queen, which will play a significant role later on. So my opponent plays now d takes c. He wants to take this pawn. Maybe he thought I'm gonna take it back with the bishop, but that's going to be a second move with the same piece. Remember, we do not do that, even if it's about the pawn. Well, the pawns are not that important in the opening. If you really want to crush your opponent, it's all about the development. In fact, you can even sacrifice those pawns and sometimes even pieces just to get more activity, to bring more of your pieces faster into the game. Because actually, if you think about it, it's not about the number of pieces on the chess game that you have. It's about the number of active pieces who truly participate in the game. Because let's say this rook on h1, who cares if my opponent has it or not, if I'm gonna checkmate him earlier here in the center and that rook never participates in the game. So that is the essential factor, and let me show you how I implemented this system to beat my opponent here. Just 8 moves later, he resigned in this game. How unbelievable is that? So I'm playing here knight to c6. Yet again, I'm bringing a new piece, but not only that, it's not a simple developing move. I am creating a threat for my opponent. I want to play the move d4, and as the knight is pinned, it's gonna get into trouble, it cannot move. So this is exactly what I want you to achieve, not just developing the pieces, not just creating threats, because if you take your one queen and move it around the board, yes, you might create a bunch of threats for your opponent, but in the meantime, where he's gonna defend against those threats, he's gonna develop a bunch of his pieces, and then eventually you're gonna get into trouble. I don't want you to do that. I want you to combine bringing every single one of your pieces into the game with creating the threats for your opponents. Of course, not always it's that simple, but that's what you should be aiming for. My opponent plays here the move a3. And that is exactly what I was talking about. Those side pawns, you don't really want to spend your time, or rather to waste your time with it. Because I'm taking now on c3, it's an active move. Of course, I don't go back. Never go back unless it's really essential. Yes, sometimes it might be a good move, but in most of the cases, like more than 90% of the cases, I notice how low-rated players are going backwards, and that actually limits their potential hugely, and they miss so many attacking chances, so many chances to go forward. Nobody cares about those weak pawns. All that matters is the initiative and that you create those threats. So my opponent takes it, there is nothing else he can do, and now I'm bringing yet another piece, queen, to the game. Queen is so powerful, and yes, in the opening you normally don't develop it too early. Why? Because it could get into trouble, it could get into attacks. But here, if you attack from the side, it's actually very difficult for the opponent to attack it, yet it's creating a lot of problems for him. He played the move queen to b3. And now, of course, I continue in the same fashion. Of course, I continue putting pressure on him. I don't care about pawns, material here. All that matters is to get to his king, because if you notice, it's in the center and it's pretty vulnerable. Yes, my own king is also in the center, but what matters is whether your opponent can create threats to it. If he currently has no way to create a threat for me, then I can postpone my castles for a few moves so that I'm fast enough to create those threats for him. Now he plays the move rook c1, seemingly a good developing move, but actually he's already in trouble because I constantly win that time by making the tempo move. Tempo move is something I really want you to use in your games. That's a move that is very, very useful for you, and that's essential. You're not playing hope chess when you're making a random move that is not good for you at all, just hoping for your opponent to blunder. No, instead you want to make a useful move, like in this case I played knight to e4, attacking this pawn, centralizing my knight. I mean, the knight in the center is so powerful, and at the same time I create a threat for my opponent, so instead of doing what he really needs to do, which is play e3, develop the bishop and castle, he must defend that weak pawn on c3. That's exactly the point behind the tempo move. Or here, I'm taking the pawn on c5 with my knight, and it's once again a tempo move. Instead of developing his pieces, he has to make yet another move with the same piece that has already moved, which we know is not great, the queen. Queen went to b2, and now I'm developing yet another piece. I'm playing bishop to f5. The bishop is so active, controlling so many important squares along this diagonal. So if you look at the position, all of my pieces are so active. The minor piece's development is already finished. All I need to do is just castle and bring my rooks into the center. Then I have a perfect development. And notice that my opponent is so far away from it, because his bishop on f1 still is not developed and even cannot be developed immediately. And he was afraid to play something like e3 because that would weaken this d3 square where I can jump with my knight and then he's never gonna castle. So he still needs some time to bring this bishop into the game and to secure his king. But first he plays bishop e3, the move that I don't like, but it's a very good example of what you should avoid playing in chess in general and in the opening in particular. He is no beginner. I mean, my opponent is 2000 rated, but you see he makes this exact mistake that I notice so often people are making, going back, moving twice the same piece that has already been developed, and actually he's doing both of that in the same move now. So you could have seen a good example where we develop a piece and create a thread at the same time. That would be a multi-purpose move that is great, and here we have like combining all of the bad things in one move that I want you to avoid. So please carefully look at this move and never repeat it in your games. This video is brought to you by Chestnut. Chestnut is making amazing chessboards that allow you to play online from a real 3D board. They have high quality chessboards, nice looking chess pieces, so that you can enjoy and having fun playing it. Chestnut boards also have so many training functions that I absolutely love to use to my training, and it helps me to improve my chess every day. This is, for example, Chestnut Evo. I love to use it for my trainings, but they have so much to offer you depending on your preferences and your budget. And the best part is you can just use the promo code Grandmaster or click the link in the description to get a big discount on all of the Chestnut products. Why it's so bad? Well, because I use this time he is basically wasting it. I'm making castles. Not really because I'm so afraid of my king, although it's always great to have your king in the safety zone, but mainly I really want to finish my development and bring my rooks to the center, because afterwards that would be absolutely unstoppable. My opponent is gonna be miserable and his king is still there in the center. That's exactly what happened in the game. He played here the move g3, he cannot develop the bishop here anymore because, well, it's blocked, and I'm playing rook f to e8. Just developing my pieces. I am not too fast. Once it's time, I'm gonna crash, of course. But first, I want to bring all of my forces. So he plays bishop g2. He develops his bishop, and now he's one tempo away from castling. And then he's going to be more or less fine. So this is the moment. Once I understand, okay, my opponent is about to castle, he's going to be fine. So right now, it's time for me for action. How I can create a problem for him. How can I stop him from developing his pieces normally, from securing his king? Well, feel free to pause the video for a second here and find the best move for black. I hope you have found it, because if you really use this two-step system, then it shouldn't be that difficult for you. We have to act right now. We, of course, always start with the most active opportunities, which are checks, captures, and threats. I mean, if you're gonna blunder in your games, the chances are it's going to be either a check or a capture or a threat. And if you're gonna miss a very good opportunity that you can play, that would be also one of those three things. That is why I highly encourage you to always start with it. Many people ask me like, well, but I don't have enough time for that. I'm gonna just lose on time in every single one of my games. Well, don't really worry about that. You should learn the system first, like literally asking your questions every single time. Do I have any checks? Do I have any captures? Is it good for me? Calculate the variations a little bit. Does my opponent have an opportunity to check? It's equally important to follow your opponent's ideas, because you never play chess alone. So many low-rated players are making this mistake of thinking that they're alone on the chessboard and only they have their ideas and plans. No, that's absolutely not true, and you must always focus whenever your opponent makes a move. Just stop for a second, all of the thoughts you have about your plans, and think what he wants to achieve with that move. And never assume that he has no bad intentions behind his moves, like he's just playing bishop g2 and he just wants to develop the bishop, he does not create any threats. Well, in some cases it might be true, although here I would argue that his threat is to castle, and then his king is going to be away and we are gonna spoil our chance. That is also some kind of a threat. But sometimes this bishop might also create a huge threat for us, like attacking something. So every single time we need to think about that. With the time, once you're focused on the right stuff, then your brain will start doing it automatically, and it's gonna happen faster and faster until eventually you're gonna just not notice how it happens in the matter of a few seconds. But first, to start this entire process, to insert it into your brain, to make it your habit, please intentionally ask those questions every single time. Once your opponent makes a move, what is the idea behind that? Once you think about your opportunities, start with checks, captures, and threats. Alright, now let's come to the move after which my opponent just resigns immediately. He recognized how bad his position is. I'm playing here the move d4, and there is absolutely nothing you can do with it. Let me show you why. First of all, this pawn is pinned, and that is why it's so essential to play it exactly now and not wait one more move. Yes, I understand we could develop the last piece into the game, but sometimes we need to find this balance between developing our pieces and actually just winning the game and creating threats for our opponent. So both are great, and you have to find the right balance. Because if you just take a few of your pieces and just go on into the attack, that is not going to be enough in most of the cases. You're going to violate this key principle of one piece, one move. At the same time, sometimes if you just develop all of your pieces without thinking about the threats, without the most active opportunities, remember, checks, captures, and threats first, then you're going to miss those valuable chances. Like this move d4. So he cannot take with a pawn, but he also cannot take with a bishop. If you are carefully see at the position, you're going to notice that this rook is perfect along the e-file. Let's say you can take with the knight first. I'm going to take it back, and then once again you have absolutely nothing to take it back. If you take with the pawn, well, it's a rule violation. I'm going to stop the clock, call the arbiter, and well, you're going to get into trouble. And if you are going to take with the bishop, then there is a very powerful resource, and of course you're gonna miss it if you're not thinking about the most active opportunities, checks, captures, threats. There is only one reasonable check here, but it's completely winning the game. Just knight to d3, it's a fork, and the pawn cannot take it because of the pin. And all of that happens because this king still is in the center, because it had no time to secure itself and to castle. That is why time is the most important resource in chess, and that's why you should religiously focus on your development, bringing every single one of your pieces into the game as fast as possible in every single one of your games. Of course, to be able to find such active and great opportunities, you have to improve your tactical awareness. With that, and using these principles, you're gonna really bring your chess to a completely new level. In this video, I have prepared for you a 20 minutes daily practice where I show you exactly what you need to do and how you need to do it to achieve this goal.